I come to you yet again on Women's Month, and this time I'm with three beautiful, beautiful women. Metropolitan, Lesotho. We are still talking #Inspire Inclusion. I want the ladies to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do. Go ahead, Me.
Thank you, Melavi. So my name is Thapelo Mohami. I'm the head of corporate services. I basically manage risk, legal and compliance.
Awesome. Thank you. Miss Sips.
Thank you. My name is Masipati Mahele, the Human Capital Head for Metropolitan Lesotho. Basically what I do is talent acquisition, talent management and talent retention.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And you, lovely lady.
Thank you, madam. My name is Mamelo Pumani Melang, and my job is to service everybody within Metropolitan Lesotho.
Oh, I love that. So if we come to reception, guess who you might just find?
Indeed, you know it.
So I'm excited specifically about today because we get to answer questions from men and women across the business that are firstly curious about all of you, and curious, I think, about the commitment that Metropolitan Lesotho is making to this particular year's #Inspire Inclusion. And the first question that I would like to pose is to you, Memame, and it's really talking about some of your challenges, and it reads, what is the most difficult challenge that you have had to face as a female leader in this industry particularly?
That's a nice question, and probably my answer is being myself. That's the biggest challenge. When you are in an industry such as this and you're first female, whatever, the challenge can be others that have been CEOs, because then you don't come with your brand of leadership. So my biggest challenge is constantly saying, no, I want to keep that slide. No, I want to keep that note like that because it represents me and whatever challenges I'm dealing with. And so the biggest challenge is constantly trying to ensure that I stay true to myself and constantly calling up the courage to stay true to myself and to represent my unique brand of leadership, and not to try and emulate other people or emulate what someone else has said, this is what a leader should do and should look like. So it's a constant tension for me to not be what people expect of a CEO.
Yeah.
And I think my staff can attest to that I don't fit the mold, and that's because I try not to fit the mold.
Yeah. So the power is in your uniqueness.
Absolutely.
Interestingly, there is a question that completely contradicts what she just said. And I want to read it to you, Mimasipa, because this one I need all of us to understand and hopefully get guidance as well from an HC perspective. So there's a myth that women generally don't stand up in organizations or they're not seen. And our MD comes out and says, one of my biggest challenges is actually standing up for myself and being seen. What are some of the ways in which women can guarantee success in organizations? So being seen, but also not compromising who we are, because it seems like there's this weird tension between the two.
I think it starts first with understanding who you are and believing in yourself and what you're capable of doing. And once you do that, then you understand the value you have to give to the other people. I think most of the time we as women, we have been sort of finding ourselves under the pressure to shrink because of societal norms and standards, and I think that has put us at a disadvantage somewhat.
Yeah. So I've made this choice, and I want to round up with you, Memami, on some of the things that really help us to stand by our choice. So I've made this choice, and now I know that I have to be myself to come to the table. Then what? I think is normally the next question. How do I then succeed as a young woman? Are there tools available? Like, how do I actually help myself flourish and succeed in this organization that I'm in?
I think self-development is key because I talked about understanding your value.
Yeah.
And most of the time that value has to do with what do you know, because knowledge is power at the end of the day. So it is important that we each take that advantage to make sure that we self-develop.
Yeah. As a lover of books, there's something intriguing that you just shared with us that I would love for you to impart to our audience around this issue of how do we succeed as women?
Yeah.
in
Okay.
organizations?
If I like what Mema Sipat is saying about self-development, and I think it's important for us to understand that self-development means that you need to invest in yourself first
Yes.
before someone else, an organization, your boss, or whoever can come and invest in you. And I think a long time ago, we had this conversation at a strategy conversation in, what percentage of your salary actually goes towards you investing in yourself. And I really think a lot of us don't understand that value that we need to first invest in ourselves before someone else can invest in us. Yeah. So that's very important. And I'm listening to books. If I'm in the car, I'm listening to a book. I'm listening to a book. If I'm bathing, after my quiet time, I'm listening. If I'm doing makeup, I'm listening to a book. And I'm constantly reading something. I'm constantly researching something. I'm constantly upping what Mema Sipati calls, knowledge. Bringing up that power. And the one thing that I heard last week while I was listening to one book that I thought was important with this particular question that you just asked is understanding your value. But in understanding your value, you need to make a list. They say you need to make a list of your achievements and what it is that you know. And then you need to let people know about it. Don't just make that list and then it's just, between you, yourself, and you. It is a list that you let other people know because you say, this is the value that I have. So make a list for yourself and then see that, okay, I can do this. This is what I'm good at, right? These are my achievements. Then shout about it. Let someone else know that this is my list of achievements and this is my list of, experiences and what I know and the strengths that I bring.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times women don't shout about they sit in the corner and they hoping beyond hope that someone is going to see that, oh, there's some strong woman in the corner. No.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand and shout out to the rooftops. Go and have a meeting in Mema Sipati. If you feel like you want to work in Metapi, go and have a meeting and tell her, this is what I know. This is the skill, the new skill that I've learned. Go out there and shout out your contributions and your achievements.
Wow.
Yeah.
You'd swear I make the questions up, but I promise you I don't. They are set up to be contradictory in nature. So listen to this one. So, Metapi, our boss says, you know what? To succeed in any organization, you need to raise your hand. And a lot of the time for women, raising our hand means taking on extra work. And you are no stranger to taking on a lot of work. And I wanted to ask you this question because I think it is important. Is there such a thing, firstly, as work-life balance? And secondly, what does it look like for women? Especially a team that is disproportionately women, which is your team. What does work-life balance look like? How do I still say, Meti, please, can I come with you? But knowing that I also have all of these different hats that I'm wearing. What are some of your tips on handling that?
Oh, thank you, Melavi, for a lovely question. So first of all, we need to appreciate that there's no such thing as a perfect work-life balance.
Yeah.
We know that as young women growing in different industries, the drive, the ambition to want to succeed, take on more so that you get more recognition is very enticing, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what you need to do basically to ensure that there's work-life balance of some sort in your life is to first acknowledge that it will never be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to also recognize that if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to perform. So you need to set up time for self-care. Do something that is getting back your mental health, your physical health. You could exercise, you could engage in an activity. Mama mentioned she listens to the self-development books. That is something that you would allocate for yourself. But I think most importantly is, how do you prioritize your time? How do you prioritize your work activities? How do you manage your time? It's very important. Because you can do all these things, you can allocate time to self-care, mental health, work, but if you don't prioritize appropriately, then it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And also recognizing that you can't do everything.
Yeah.
You have people, you have colleagues, so you need to delegate.
Yeah.
Empower people, trust that people can do, able and competent to do work, and that would also assist.
Yeah.
And also, I think what we also need to do, which I learned in my past experience, is that to avoid burnout, to avoid degrading your human capital, as in with other people, social capital. You need to be intentional about setting time for self-care, setting time for your loved ones, setting time for your friends. Because if you prioritize at work, you also need to manage your personal life.
That's true. That's true.
Wow.
I love the honesty, because I mean, personally, for a very long time, I felt stuck in the idea that there has to be a balance. And really what MetaB is bringing to the table is, it's actually a very playful prioritization wheel. Everything gets its turn, but you just have to be smart in when and in investing yourself fully when you've decided that the when is the when. I want to ask you what I think is one of your personal brags, Masipati, and it's around the makeup of the team that is the executive team. And I'm going to back it up with maybe your most prominent hire, that she happens to be a woman, right? What do those stats look like in a Metropolitan Lesotho EXCO? What's the proportion of women to men in that particular table? And have you seen a change? Whether you're going to compare it with your previous life, it doesn't matter. But have you seen a change in maybe the way things are decided in dialogue? I just want to get a sense. Make people want to come work here.
Okay, I think the proportion now is 60% women.
Wow.
Thereabout. And I personally love it.
Wow.
And it's my first experience, so to speak.
Wow.
I've been in boardrooms where it's male dominated. And like I said initially, that at some point we may find ourselves having to shrink before men. It sort of played out in such environments, and I feel like now I'm really comfortable and enjoying the boardroom these days.
Wow. I love it too. How about you?
Wow.
How about you? Listen to this.
This is a different. This is a nice perspective to have, because I've always said that we have to be intentional about creating that, trying to find that balance. And the first thing that I wanted to do when I came into this role was to be intentional about it. Whenever I have a vacancy, I look at the team and I say, okay, where are we sitting? And what are the dynamics, and what do I think will help with the dynamics from a gender perspective? But there has to be that intentionality. I think sometimes we leave it too much to chance. And say, okay, if it's a woman that comes, then good, but we don't actually intentionally make it that it is a woman. And I think for me, that's what I've tried to do, is to be intentional about it. So from the get-go, from when I advertise, in my head I'm like, sure, no, I need a male or I need a female. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if it scares you sometimes. I often go, is that even politically correct? That she voices that. But to your point, Mama Sipadi, there's a different dimension that comes with a nice balance of opinions and views. I look at, for instance, how really particular about detail you are versus, a colleague who may be very dreamy, and the end product is just such a symphony of wowness all the time. Like, our work is really impressive
because of the diversity
around
the table.
Of thought. And the reason why I wanted to ask that was because of this particular hashtag. There are a lot of questions around people wanting to see visible acts of inclusion. You know, almost as if in their corners of the business and maybe even the world, they don't see visible acts of inclusion. Do we have these conversations about, I'm not going to hire a man, you know, for instance, Meti, because you're disproportionately female. Is it a conscious choice that you share with people, or are we still maybe a bit gun shy about saying it outright, like lawyers? I mean, Mercy, but maybe let's start with you on the recruiting table, and then you, Meti, on the perceptions that having this disproportionately female team has created for you in the business.
For me, it always plays out in my mind, but unfortunately I never ate out.
Okay.
I think I have to learn from her. It's not wrong to age out, you know, and be at the same level with whoever you're working with, but it always comes in my mind to say, maybe for this one I need a male, or maybe this one I need a female.
So it is a topical issue for all of us, the constant imbalance and actively wanting to include. Has that changed our perceptions of you and your ability to do your role, because you have a lot of women and not so many men?
I think my preference towards women, right, in this portfolio is the nature of the job. You have to pay attention to detail. You have to hit the ground running. And, you know, in a world where we have men and women, and we have that gender thing, where men will not be taking instructions from a woman, I think for me, it's I want people who are here to do the job. I don't want egos. I don't want to brush egos, you know. It has always been a conscious choice for me. I know in the world, or an external view of this and how it plays out, is that we are speaking about inclusion, but you're leaving men out.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily leaving men out. I know I've gone to interviews with the view that I want a man this time around. I want to balance the team.
Yeah.
And then we go through the process, and the men are like, you know.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I want that person. I want that person for their brain, for their attention to detail, and then it turns out to be a woman.
Wow.
So it has sort of.
It's played out.
It's played out in the process.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
You know, some of the reasons why people will say, I want to hire balance is because, you know, there are subgroup categories. So for instance, we have this, I don't want to say we have it, but we are known to be pullers of other women, the pull her down syndrome. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because it's a question that actually came up. How do you deal with it, first and foremost? And I want to start with you, Mema. You know, your role has come with its many, many pressures, and I can imagine millions of opinions.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with things that felt like, but you're pulling me down? And
I call it out. The thing about pull her down is that it will become a thing as long as we don't call it out. Yeah. I will call it out. I will ask you, are you sabotaging me because, you know, I'm a woman? Or, you know, what is this? So the thing, whether it's Meti and, you know, her recruitment endeavors and whatever, the thing is, we don't talk about these things. We don't put them out there. And so pull her down syndrome we need to talk about it. We need to actually call it out. If you feel like that's what it is, then let's call it out. Because a lot of the times, because we're tiptoeing around issues, we give them power, because they never actually out in the open.
Yeah.
So me, there's no place where I will not go. I call everything out.
Yeah.
And that's my superpower. Yeah.
Wow. So call it out.
Call it out.
And call it out.
Yeah. Call it out. I know that I'll step on some toes.
Yeah.
And I know that people will be like, men or But by that time, Mera also
Exactly.
Yeah, it's okay. And then, you know, then it's easier to then start to address the issues. Not calling it out it gives it power, and it's growing and growing. It's growing.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, journaling and writing. When you write something and you put it out there, it becomes external, and so it doesn't have the power anymore.
That's true.
So not calling these behaviors out, not talking about them, not creating topical issues out of them for us to debate around the boardroom table will create monsters out of them.
That's true, right?
Yeah.
That is true. I want to ask a slightly more maybe personal question, but still around this idea of destigmatizing certain terms that are put around groups of women working together. And I'll start it this way. Are you a mentor, and do you talk about these things with your mentees? It's a literal question.
Yeah.
Like literally, these are the questions.
Thank you, Melaba. I am a mentor.
Wonderful.
In fact, it's what I love doing, especially the youth. I love youth development initiatives. So yeah.
Yeah, and do you actually have time to talk about the prickly conversations, the imposter syndrome, which I'm definitely going to ask Meti about because she doesn't seem to have any of it. Is it something that you talk about actively around the terms that we find being attached to women because we're women?
Not really. Maybe because I'm also struggling with that. I've just learned, as she was talking, that what I use as a mechanism is avoidance and ignoring. If I find that you are pulling me down, I would rather ignore you and avoid you as much as I can. And maybe it's not working. Maybe I should just try to adopt whatever she's doing. Because then you have dealt with it there and then.
Wow.
Yeah.
I promise you the questions are not controlling in any way. But the two of you have actually raised something so interesting. There was a question that specifically asked, what is the difference between introverted... Here it is. The question says, why is corporate kinder to introverted men versus introverted women? And Mema Sipati's monologue around my coping mechanism is avoidance. I'm also an avoidant, and I tend to think it's because I'm an introvert. But clearly there's a perception that corporate is kinder to introverted men than women. Is it that introversion in women is perceived as weak? Do we have to be extroverted and call things out all the time? Are there other ways to do it? Just balancing this for the introverted women out there as well.
Yeah, this is an interesting question, and I saw it and it stumped me because I would not have said that. It would be interesting to understand the context of it, but I actually don't agree. I think corporate is kinder to extroverted men because men tend to talk and they tend to project an air of confidence even when they're not confident. And women, when they're not confident, will just shy away in the corner and not be at the table. So I'm not aware that corporate is kinder to introverted men. In fact, I think corporate is very unkind to introverted men and very kind to extroverted because why am I saying this? Because I think extroverted men fit the mold, fit the box, fit the definition of the box, and introverted men don't fit the mold. Yeah. So this is a nice one to debate.
It is, right?
Yeah, to have a conversation around and just discuss what does that mean.
Yeah. And also just the personal experiences. And I'll come to Meti specifically. So when I first met Meti, I was like, yes, like she's so a typical a legal and compliance person because she's very extroverted and
very assertive
exactly. And if you juxtapose her and our COO, for instance, right, complete opposites, but at the same time the way in which you relate to each other somehow balances itself out. And I want to get a sense from you, Meti, is it something that comes from the extrovert in the relationship or the introvert?
Oh, thank you. So as an extrovert, right?
Oh yeah. Unless you want to speak for the introvert.
No, I'm going to speak for myself. As an extrovert, I like to talk to people. I like to intrigue people's imaginations, right? When you're quiet in your corner, I like to go and find out, what are you doing? This is what I want to do. What do you think about this? Like, what if we went in this direction? So that has worked because, specifically the COO, right? He's a very quiet person doing his own thing in the corner. And once I identify that, there's actually a lot of knowledge coming out from that space. There's actually a lot of experience coming from that space. I want to go in there and learn and question and come with my ideas, etc. So I did find when we had our leadership program from the Thinking Pairs that, okay, So these crazy ideas, I can sound them off this person because I've seen in their quiet corner, they have like a rich experience.
Oh yeah.
And then I would also sound off the CFO menu. Like, am I crazy to think this?
Oh yeah.
Can we go in this direction? I always have these wild ideas about how I can present things, how I can, make changes. And she's like, oh, no, wait, hold your horses. So the COO, on the other hand, would be bringing reason and rationality into the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
So co-creation, basically. This is no one taking over anybody. This is really us leveraging our strengths, as we always say. How do you deal with people that deliberately create anxiety for you? So, I come into your boardroom and I am deliberately combative.
Yeah.
I don't believe in what you're saying, and I actively show you.
Yeah.
Meti mentioned earlier, there's this general thing that women shouldn't really be led by men, almost like we must be subservient, so almost be manipulated somehow. How do you deal with that, and what do you then do with the anxiety after? Because it does leave something.
It does leave something. I guess for me, because it's always about leadership and teachable moments. So I'll watch it first to see, is there a teachable moment here? Is there an opportunity for this person to grow? And what is that opportunity? And how am I going to help them find that moment and learn from it? So I'll start there first. So it's never really about me first. It's more about that person more than me. So it's how am I going to help this person grow out of this behavior or out of that? And if it does trigger an anxiety in me, then I have to go and do the shadow work to say, what is it about that behavior that's triggering me? I have to go look inside myself first and see what trauma, what issue have I not dealt with that triggers something in me. And then how can I use that again in service of that person in terms of, teachable moment? How do I help that person grow out of that? So more often than not, it goes there. But sometimes in the moment, all of that can disappear as well, because in that moment, as we're in a session and I can see, I will call it out. Yeah, I will call it out as I'm wont to do. If I think there isn't necessarily a teachable moment there, I'll call it out and say, hang on. Yeah. So I am just a call out kind of person, because if I don't call things out, I won't sleep. They will fester. Like
sit with the injustice.
I will sit with, and for me, because I am such a justice seeker, I cannot sit with something if it's really killing me. Yeah. I think by now everybody around the table sort of knows me. I'll call you and say, hang on, what's happening here? Yeah. So call it out. But I think let's also do the work in ourselves. So for me, I always go back to myself and what is it in the shadow there, lurking in the shadow, that is now triggering me when somebody says A or somebody says A in a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that you're not the hurt one going around hurting other people, right?
Right. Oh, you just put that in such a beautiful way. Hurt leaders hurt others.
That's true.
When a leader is hurt, they will hurt the people that they are leading.
That's true.
Yeah, and it will always happen that way, because if you don't do the work as a leader, you will hurt others.
Yeah.
I've hurt many people in my days, and I've had to learn from that experience and say, how do I not find a way to hurt someone else as a leader? Yeah.
That's powerful. Whew, that really is powerful, and it leads me to my one but last question, and I want the two of you ladies to tackle it, because I think the viewers don't quite know you yet. Have you ever had to act out of character? And if you don't have to tell us like verbatim, but just give us the juice. We wanna understand. Have you ever had to act out of character? So, for instance, I consider myself very kind, but I can be very, very mean and nasty, and there's certain things that trigger that. Have you ever had to do that? And maybe just give us a little bit of a highlight on what actually triggered that.
Okay. I have.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's an unfortunate incident that I recall as you asked this question. So I was in another world, in another business, right? So I'm generally somebody who's a rescuer. I'm very much a rescuer. I see a sign of trouble, I run to the rescue of that person. I drop everything. So I was in this role. I was acting for a long period of time, a similar role to the one I have now. And then I talked to my boss. I say, let's segregate for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons, right? Then the role is segregated. I get another portion of the role, and then there is a person who's going to get another portion of the role. This guy comes in, obviously from a very junior position, but I'm like, let him come in, we'll work together.
Yeah.
Now, he arrives, and I'm holding his hand for a period of time, I think 3 to 6 months. And then comes a time when there is a need to submit something big, like IFRS 17 compliance, right?
Yeah.
And then I go with this guy through the process, but he's not in meetings, he's missing meetings, he's joining meetings from the street. He's asking me to comment in meetings, right?
Yeah.
He's asking me to comment in meetings. And then come the deadline for submission of this big deal of a submission, right, to the regulator. And at the time, I think my mom was sick, so I was out of town, but I was working from home. So I'm looking in my emails, where's this document? Did this guy submit? I look through and the document is not there. I call him, did you submit the document? He's like, no.
Oh my goodness.
And then I have to travel from Hlotse to Maseru so that I can compile documents, scan and send to the central bank. So I did this, so the deadline was on Friday. So I came in the morning of Saturday. I did this, I submit. And then we get called to a meeting by the boss. And then there's backlash all over. I'm included, I'm collateral damage.
Yeah.
So I've had to act out of character in this way. I was just like, you dropped the ball.
And you called it out?
Yeah, I called it out. And then after that meeting, I wrote a very long handover notes. Long. I was like, not my job, your job. Do this, do this, do this. Like ordinarily, in front of the boss, I wouldn't have,
Yeah.
I'd always try to save somebody's skin
Absolutely.
and take the backlash, etc. But I was aware that this is going to be a stain on my career, on my capabilities.
Yeah.
So unless I speak now, the men will always be hiding behind us, because particularly interestingly, in this case, it was a man.
Yeah, sometimes being a sacrificial lamb is not so cool, is
Yeah.
it? Mamasi, but round us off with your experience acting out of character. What have been those experiences? What has triggered you? And so that I can see you when you're not
Thank you, ma'am. For me, it was when my integrity was put to test.
Ooh.
So if you really want to know me, that's something I wanted to protect at all costs.
Yes.
So there was this one time where my boss at the time asked me to do something that was not in line with the procedure.
Yes.
And I was like, no. Sorry, Mr. Boss. I know you mean well, but I will not be able to do this thing. Basically because not so long ago, you and I had this discussion that it is so important for us to make sure that we enforce this labor and related regulations. And we cannot be seen to be the ones now going against what we said the people should be following as a policy and procedure.
Yeah.
So let's rather be exemplary and make sure that we make good followership.
Right.
Yeah.
And I suppose, drawing to Mama's earlier point around then having to go and do the shadow work, because I can imagine like almost peeing in my pants saying, hang on, Mr. Boss. But clearly the shadow work around why such anxiety to remain true to yourself is something that we all need to do constantly. I want to end our conversation today with this, lovely ladies. Give me 5 biggest brags of your life so far. I'll start with you.
You started with me?
Yes,
Goodness.
5 biggest brags of your life.
Standing up for myself
Yes.
every time I'm being trampled on. Staying true to myself,
Yes.
especially as a leader, because that's the moments when fitting in and appearing to fit the mold would be would be the ideal thing to do.
Yes.
Being a mother to my bambino girl, she makes me do the most shadow work because as I parent her, I have to meet myself every now and again, all the time, and talk to my anxieties, talk to my triggers. And so how I parent her really challenges my shadow. And so I'm constantly doing shadow work with her and creating my life my own, because this work-life balance thing, my achievement is saying, I remember when she was small, her bedtime used to be at 7, and then I'd sometimes get home late and she's sleeping. I changed the bedtime to 8 so that I could get there and see her before she goes to bed. So making work-life balance work for me and being brave enough to do that.
Yeah.
And then, constantly becoming the best version of myself that I can be would be the last one. As a healer, as a leader, as a mother, as a sibling, as a daughter, constantly working at becoming the best version of myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'd like to hear your top 5 brags, May HC.
Thank you, May. The first one is my marriage. I'm quite proud of what I've made this far. So to speak, I'm now 14 years in marriage.
Wow.
Still going strong.
Congratulations.
So that's my number one top priority. If anything has to stop for it, let it be.
Wow.
Yeah. Then my 2 bambinos, little daughters, I love them. And if there's anything I can do just to keep a smile on their faces, I'll do that.
You're a pushover. We love it.
Wrapped around their little fingers.
Then my career. I believe I've made it quite early in my life. The first time I was appointed as an executive, I was just below 30 years.
Wow.
And I felt like, wow, I've made it in life. I still feel so even today.
Wow.
Yeah. Number 4, I feel like leadership has to evolve.
Yes.
And when I see myself as a leader, I always see myself evolving. I look at myself as a leader 10, 13 years ago. I'm like, wow, you've grown up, girl. Well done. Yeah. So I love what I see.
Wow. She's in love with her own journey. We love it for you. I'd love to hear your top 5 brags.
First and foremost, won a battle over depression. So I used to be depressed a few years ago. I lost my mother and then spiraled out of control. And I came out of that very strong. And I think what I'm also proud of is going back to gym. I'm an athlete. I've been athletic all my life, and then somewhere in the craziness of life that fell off the sides.
Yeah.
And I went back to gym. I want to go back to play tennis. I want to play netball. I'm coming back.
Yeah.
This girl is coming back. So that's very important for me. The third one for me was, I'm extremely extroverted.
Yes.
And as I was going through climbing the corporate ladder, there were these red herrings that were coming. I remember a conversation that I had with Memami where she said, people think you're arrogant. Tell me about that. And I was like, maybe it's how I exude my confidence.
Yes.
I am confident. And I'm not going to shrink that. I'm confident. I'm confident about my achievements, about what I know, what I can do.
Yes.
I am not afraid. But how do I exude that? How does that make people feel?
Yeah.
So I've been very good over the past few years in channeling it properly. Don't outshine someone's light. Be confident, but don't make other people feel small. So I think it has been a personal growth journey for me.
Wow.
And I'm very proud of that.
Wow.
And
Last one.
No, 4. So I think number 4 was landing this job and being confident about doing it. When you come out from a banking industry, I've been there for 7 years. I was killing it. And then I shifted to insurance and people were like, are you sure?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Girl, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I was like, girls, I can do this.
Yes.
And I'm very proud to have landed this job, and I'm proud of the progress that I've made. And also, as Mema Sipat has mentioned, I think my career from 2018 was like a quantum leap. You know, I joined the banking industry low level. I just wanted a foot in the door. I did credit, I did this and that, I did ORM, I did this. And then the minute I got in my space, legal, I moved through the positions like in a very short space of time.
Wow.
And I'm very proud of that.
You hire
I think
only smart people.
and I think last one really is the work I've done with my children. I feel very proud to be a mother to those two beautiful kids.
Wow. Can I tell you my biggest win?
Please.
So my biggest win, particularly this year, has been to get to quiz incredible women like yourselves. This is the first time we've talked on air, and I'm practicing to be a talk show host, so I'm taking this seriously. This is the first time we've talked on air. This is our third time, and every single time I sit, there is so much knowledge to gain from just listening to women and listening to how we reason and how we do things. And it really is one of my biggest brags of the year, to be honest. Of the year.
Wow.
And with that, I would like to say, from me and these beautiful, beautiful women, let's hashtag inspired inclusion. And